Hello, thank you for inviting me to this conference. I'm here for the fourth time, and this was actually the first conference that ever invited me as a speaker internationally, so I'm really grateful for that. So I would like to start by introducing PHPStan for a little bit. And what it's about? It's about the fact that PHP is interpreted, and as opposed to compiled languages, which need to know the type of every variable before the program runs. So, for example, the Java compiler is not going to let you run an application if you are accessing, for example, an undefined variable or calling an unknown method. But PHP is interpreted, so PHP is happy to run the program for you, and it's just going to crash when that line of code with the problem is executed. So the compiler for compiled languages acts as the first line of defense and finds a lot of problems on your behalf. But with PHP, before static analysis, you had to test every line of your code because there might be a problem. So PHP developers spent a lot of time uncovering mistakes that weren't even possible in compiled languages. But I realized that it was possible to also solve this problem, to scan the whole code base for errors. So I created PHPStan. So this is how you can install it, this is how you can run it, and the output can look something like this. It will show you errors in your code. Some are easy to fix, some are obvious, some might be a little bit more tricky. So this is what PHPStan does. So who already uses PHPStan? A lot of people. I'll never get tired of this. So, how the sausage is made? This is the title of my talk. And what does it even mean? Because this is a saying in English language, because basically you don't want to see the inner workings of a factory where the meal that you are eating is made, because you wouldn't want to eat it anymore. So I'm making this comparison because during my talk, some of you might disagree with my opinions and conclusions about open source software and how I'm leading this project. But I hope that it's not going to be that bad, and you will still happily continue to use and install PHPStan in the future too. And in all of my talks, I always aim at the practical applicability of my takeaways. So even if you are not developing open source software, I would like to give you some takeaways that you can take to your work and apply them when you get back to work on Monday morning. And one final disclaimer, all of this comes from my experience. It works for me and for PHPStan. And of course, you might prefer to work differently, and that's totally okay. This is just my experience. So some numbers first. In last year, I closed 1,609 issues. I managed over 1,000 pull requests. And this is only from other people. This is because personally I push directly to the main branch. I mostly don't use pull requests myself, so this is only from other people. And if you count pull requests from bots, updating various dependencies, etc., you have to add 500 more. And I did 212 releases in 2022. So if you divide this by the number of days or work days in a year, it might look that I'm very busy, but it doesn't feel like that at all to me. I am proud of my work-life balance because I have two little kids, and I've never built so much Lego and played so many video games in my life. So these numbers might seem big, but it's totally fine. This is the outline of what I'm going to talk today, and I want to start by talking about what is it that I actually do at my job, at working on PHPStan. So my main responsibility is providing roadmap and vision, because it's really important to making sure that we are staying on the same page, on the same road, and to make consistent decisions every day. And every day I spend time deciding what should and should not be in the project. And it might be, it's a bit challenging in open source because people just show up with their own ideas and their own pull requests. So it's a bit challenging, but I try to make it work. And what I consider the roadmap. The roadmap is my private to-do list of ideas that I would like to do someday. And the to-do list is huge. It's like 500 items or something like that. And it's private because it's constantly changing, and I'm shuffling it around because I don't want to promise anything and be bound by that because I'm pretty sure that some of those ideas are pretty bad. So my point is that I say no to most stuff because it's the only way to make the development sustainable and the project working. I would rather polish the existing feature set rather than add one feature after another with mediocre quality. So what kind of features, what kind of changes make it into PHPStan? What I prefer to work on is understanding your PHP code better and finding legit and useful bugs and making popular features that are already in PHPStan better. And the most popular feature of PHPStan is ignoring errors. So I'm not sure if this should make me happy or sad, but I judge this from the popularity of the baseline feature, and the page about ignoring errors is the most visited page on PHPStan's website. And I spent a lot of time crafting the errors so that they are precise and useful, and people just ignore them. But it's what makes PHPStan useful because you are giving the user the error, and they can decide what they want to do with it. So I think it's actually fine, but it's kind of funny. So as an example of a popular feature that I'm working to improve is that right now you can ignore an error in line with this comment, but this will ignore all errors on that line, including, so for example, if I want to ignore the error about the type, about the argument type that's passing into the function, the $i, maybe it's supposed to be a string, but I'm passing an integer or something like that, I can put this annotation there. But it's going to ignore all errors on that line. So for example, when in the future this method no longer exists, you will not find out about that. So what I'm currently working on is that I'm going to add error identifiers, some kind of label, some kind of category for all errors. So each error will be recognizable not just by its error message, but also by this identifier. So you will be able to ignore errors by this identifier. And examples of things that don't make it into PHPStan are feature requests about opinionated subjective errors that are not legit bugs in all PHP code bases that are subjective. So for example, I don't like the PHP empty keyword because it's too fuzzy, it's too loose, and it's not that useful. But PHPStan core does not report the empty keyword as an error because some people prefer to use it, and it would be very opinionated to disallow it for everyone. But you can install PHPStan strict rules that can afford to be a little bit more opinionated, and that's where this keyword is always reported, and you should use something else. So when people ask about some opinionated bug to report, I tell them that there's always space for third-party packages and custom rules to implement. And old PHP features with better alternatives. So for example, when someone asks to do something about a switch statement, maybe report more errors about it, I tell them that they should use match expression instead, which was added in PHP 8. Because match expression is an alternative to the switch statement, and it works better it's better in every way, both in PHP and in PHPStan. And an example of how to solve bugs with easy workarounds. So sometimes PHPStan doesn't understand your code correctly, and it's hard to fix that. So one example of that is that when you override the whole array, and the type of that array is supposed to change. So for example, at the beginning, the array is an array of integers. Then you iterate over the whole array and change the type of every value. So it's supposed to be an array of strings after this for each. But PHPStan doesn't understand that. still thinks that there are going to be some integers left in that array, even if it's not true. And this is hard to fix, or maybe it's not hard, but no one has figured it out so far. And it's hard to make PHPStan understand this code without breaking some other different use case. So the easy workaround for this hard bug is just to create a new array. So code can usually be rewritten so that PHPStan understands it better, and you will end up in a better place if you rewrite this code. So you can persuade PHPStan by creating a new array instead, and it's going to understand it. It's just an array of strings. So this is my guideline, how to decide what to work on. And you can also apply it at your work if you're the one who's deciding what you are going to be working on. So time is limited. We can't do everything, and we need to carefully choose what to work on. So for each idea and each impulse, I need to evaluate if it's worth doing. So I need to decide how much benefit there is for a specific feature. And PHPStan doesn't collect any data, so it's mostly my hunch and experience by looking at other people's code. And also how often the same problem repeats in the issue tracker. So I try to evaluate each idea and place it in one of these corners. So in one dimension, we have the assumed benefit of a feature, and on the other dimension, we have the effort that's required to implement this. So certain benefit and easy effort. Sure, let's do it right now. This is really easy, right? More effort, but still a certain benefit. This will take more time, but it's still worth doing, right? And if we have questionable benefit with easy effort, yeah, sure, maybe one day we can work on it, but it's not going to bring much to the table. And if we have questionable benefit with a lot of effort, then I really don't want to do that, right? That's a red flag for me. So this is how I evaluate all of the feature requests and ideas. Another responsibility I have is doing user support in issues and discussions. So this is really important to take care of. I like doing it, and I always strive to giving a quick response to a user if they are asking about something and they are stuck. And I would like to ask every one of you, if you have a problem, if you don't know how to solve an error, you can always ask in GitHub discussions as many times and as often as you want. It's better to ask what's the right solution or why PHPStan reports this error, rather than coming up with a wrong workaround that I often see people doing. But some features I'm actually doing for mostly myself to save time in other areas. So example of a feature to lower the number of support questions that people are asking is this one. Some questions repeat over and over again about errors, but these are actually correctly reported by PHPStan. They are not PHPStan bugs, and they are reported for a good reason, but people have no idea why. So I have to keep explaining them over and over. So what I decided to do is that for some error types, for some error messages, I'm also adding a little tip on why they are reported. And these tips are really useful. So why is PHPStan complaining about this error? It's because this code is not safe. The callable that's accepted might be called with a string, but we are only passing a closure that accepts an integer. So even if those types seem compatible, right, integer fits into a union of integer and string, we need to make sure that the accepted closure also accepts strings. So that's why I'm trying to say this with a tip that will show in the online playground and also on the terminal, in the terminal when you are running PHPStan next to a light bulb emoji. So the type next to the error message says that type integer of parameter of path callable needs to be same or wider than parameter type integer or string of accepting callable. So you also need to accept strings in your closure that you are passing into the parameter. All right. One of my other core responsibilities is taking care of the CI pipeline. So it's important for the stability of the project, and it's also important for the great contributor experience. So I really love GitHub Actions. They are really awesome, and they are not just for running tests and static analysis, but they are great generally for automations, especially if it's a one-person project like PHPStan. So PHPStan consists of two repositories. The core of PHPStan consists of two repositories. PHPStan src, where the development happens, where the source code that I'm and other people are directly editing, and there's a PHPStan/PHPStan repository that's for distribution. It's where the final far file, PHAR file, is built and committed, and that's the repository that gets hit when you install PHPStan through Composer. So it's divided like that because the far repository has 0 dependencies, so everyone can use it, even if they might have some conflicting dependencies. Because there are 0 dependencies, anyone can install the far file and anyone can use it, and it's the only way that PHP is distributed. So GitHub Actions again. PHPStan src has 17 different workflows for GitHub Actions, and the PHPStan repository has 20 different workflows. So some examples of these workflows is that I can create a new PHPStan release with a single click. I create a tag in the PHPStan src repository, and it takes a new semantic version. So I'm real lazy. I don't even want to bump up the number manually, because if there's 1.10.12 release, I don't want to type the 13. I just want to click that I'm creating a new patch version. So that's what the workflow does for me. So GitHub Actions take care of tagging the new version. They take care of building the file. They push it to the other repository. They create a new release, and also once the release is created, tweets and toots are automatically sent to Twitter and Mastodon about the release, and also the Docker images get built automatically. So this is everything that GitHub Actions can take care of. PHPStan is very complicated, and every change is really hard to get right on the first attempt. So there's a massive need for integration checks. I want to reduce false positives. I don't want to break the analysis for anyone, but I still want to move the project forward. So each push and each pull request is checked with unit tests. It runs builds for all first-party extensions like PHPStan Doctrine, PHPStan Symfony, etc., and also some third-party extensions. Of course, there are coding standards, and I'm also analyzing with each commit other open source projects like Doctrine, Drupal, Laravel, PHPUnit, PrestaShop. And I am also analyzing a couple of private code bases with companies that I have contract with. And I'm also trying to save some time, so only necessary checks are running each time. So for example, if someone changes only tests, I know that I don't need to recheck everything because no executed or code actually changed. That ends up in the distribution far file. IssueBot is another thing that I'm really proud of, because IssueBot goes through all the open issues and all the attached code examples and checks if the PHPStan the result reported by PHPStan changed for each code snippet. So sometimes we fix multiple bugs with a single change that we didn't know about. So it's good to let the author know and close the issue. And sometimes it also lets us know about things that we broke. So it's also good as kind of an integration test. So this completely runs in GitHub Actions and takes advantage of parallelization. So each time it takes just a few minutes. And I think that this is really something that other similar projects, for example, like TypeScript, could take advantage of, but I haven't seen anyone else do it, but it's really great. And other responsibility is marketing. So every time there's a packed release with a lot of new features or something interesting to tell, I write an article and I post it to social networks and Reddit. And I think this approach helped a lot in the beginning. So to get PHPStan into the world and in everyone's hands. All right, that was the first section. Another section is staying sane. So with the massive amount of people that I'm available to, it can be a challenge to stay sane and stay productive. Everyone definitely heard about some bad stories out there, but I'm really lucky, I'm really fortunate that I don't get any death threats, but being open and accessible to the public can be really overwhelming because people commenting other people's stuff on the internet don't actually understand that there's a person on the receiving end. And to get an idea, try to search Google or YouTube for reading mean comments. So I'm taking some important steps to be able to focus on my work. And one of them is that I don't reply outside of GitHub. Or at least I write a short message to move the conversation to GitHub. Because I want to force everyone to go through the same channel. And I don't want to manage multiple inboxes, multiple places. And the conversations are public, and it's easy to link to them later if someone asks the same question. And of course, if the matter of the conversation is public, like some kind of contract or doing a private workshop, I do it over email, of course. And another thing I'm doing is that I ignore what I want to ignore. So my first response to a GitHub issue or discussion is always quick, but if there's a follow-up question and I feel like I already said everything, I just archive the email and move on. Because response always triggers another response. So if I kept responding to emails, I wouldn't be able to do anything else. And some people just want to talk to another person because it might not be related at all to the project. I've had people writing me long letters with many paragraphs about my opinion, asking about my opinion on different questions, and I'm just fine if I ignore these kind of messages because I don't owe anyone anything. My main job is PHPStan development, so I don't need to respond to everyone. Also, I'm making sure that conversations aren't derailed, that we are always staying on the same topic. So if someone asks an unrelated question, I tell them that they should open a new issue or discussion instead. Also, it's important to realize that people who complain are vocal minority, because I also want to work and to satisfy the silent majority, because I need to make also PHPStan better for them and come up with important innovations. Because I know about teams who use PHPStan for years and years, and they never opened an issue or ask about something. But at the same time, there's a handful of users that are responsible for majority of issues. The usernames are the same all over. So I try to also be immune and have a thick skin about unsolicited opinions, because I only take into account opinions that are from people that I respect and that I asked for, actually. So I'm just a human, I am not a machine. So one of the great tips I heard about somewhere and picked up is to ask for kind words in issue template. Is that a jet engine? I don't know what's going on, but I would like it to be turned off. Or maybe my slides are too light. I should have used the dark theme, I don't know. So I'm asking for kind words in an issue template. So when creating a new bug report or a feature request, you can optionally write something nice about PHPStan. And that really brights up my day and can turn an essentially negative complaint about something into something much nicer. So I really like asking for these. I get no shortage of feedback every day, so I need to find my way through it. So I get bug reports, and I need to fix them, right? Because otherwise the project is unusable. And these are the current numbers on PHPStan's GitHub. And also they might seem big, but that's not actually the reality, because if you, for example, look at the Visual Studio Code repository, they have over 6,000 issues. And that doesn't mean that the project is unusable. It doesn't mean that it's really buggy and unusable. It just means that it's popular. Because when something is popular, it means that people want to do more stuff with it. They become hungry and they ask for more stuff. So that's just the reality, but it doesn't mean that I have a lot of work. I have a lot of work to do, but that's actually not connected to these numbers. And actually, some bug reports, when people choose the bug reports template, it's often a feature request, because they open a bug report and they tell me, I think that PHPStan should report an error for this piece of code, but that's not a bug report. That's a feature request. You want PHPStan to do something that it currently doesn't do, so that's a feature request. And both of these types of issues, bug reports and feature requests, are just two data points that I'm considering when thinking about the future of the project, because my own ideas, my own plans also matter a lot. It might sound to you that I'm completely ignoring the issue tracker, but that's not true, because there's more to it. The problem is that people want faster horses. People don't realize that they want cars, actually. They would just ask for a faster horse. And it's an XY problem. Person is asking for Y and doesn't explain the reason. So I ask why they want Y, and I actually find out that their problem is X is different. So one example of this phenomenon is that if a person asks how to, for example in Bash, how to get the last 3 letters of a file name, and you need to look for the pattern, and you need to realize that they are not asking for the last 3 letters of a file name. They are asking for a file extension that can be of a different length, right? So this is a similar phenomenon. So I look for patterns in issues and feature requests, and I implement them only when some pattern emerges or when people ask for it a lot, or if I can't resist it, if the idea is so awesome that I need to implement it right away. And I fix a bug if it's likely to impact many people. Again, I need to use my hunch and experience, or maybe look at the number of upvotes of the issue, or if there isn't a possible workaround, or if it coheres PHPStan. And the last point is very important: if a recent release broke something that worked before, and if a bug doesn't match this criteria, I happily wait for other people to come up with a fix for these problems. That I might also explain the high numbers that I have on my issue tracker. But I think that this is really this works for me. This works for me, and it's sustainable. Right. Another section is called importance of the feedback loop, and I would like to follow up actually on this last point, because the recent releases and the frequency of releases is really important to me. So this is what a feedback loop looks like. You gather feedback, you process feedback, you implement changes, and then you release the changes. And every active software project needs feedback. Otherwise it's dead. So software needs to solve real problems. And when I implement a new ambitious feature, I don't really know how right or wrong the code is, the code that I just wrote. Because, of course, I develop with tests, and I only release when the tests are green, but there are unknown unknowns. Because I haven't thought of some existing use case, maybe I get surprised how people use this feature, and I really can't think of everything on the first go. So that's why this is important for me, and this is why I do frequent releases. I need to find out as soon as possible how wrong I am. So that's why I want to release every change immediately. And I also want to deliver finished bug fixes quickly. So in my opinion, this is the best path to quality software, and you can also apply it even if you're not working on open source. Because most of you, or all of you, are probably working off web applications that can be deployed as many times as you want in a day, even on a Friday. Don't worry about deploying on Friday if you have a good CI pipeline and your code is covered with tests. So you should deploy your application as quickly as soon as possible because you really want to get this feedback loop going. And if your manager or your client writes 10 sheets of paper about feature requirements that you are supposed to implement over the next 6 months, it would really be a mistake to implement them in one go and release them after 6 months. And these 10 sheets of paper, these requirements might be wrong because it's just someone's ideas on paper. And you are going to work on them for a long time, and time without feedback is dangerous because we are following requirements, we are making the client happy, but we are not making the users happy. So every line of code, every assumption that you are making needs to be tried out in real waters with real users. And if you're lucky, you might finish the project on time after working on it for many months, but it's not going to be what users need because there wasn't any feedback loop. So usually how a project goes is that it's divided into phases, right? You have phase 1 with the most important things, and you have phase 2, phase 3. But with the feedback loop, what actually should happen is that you should do the phase 1, you should release it to the users into production, and you should throw away phase 2 and phase 3 because your assumptions were wrong. You are going to get feedback, and the feedback will be different, and you will have to work on different things than what you actually planned to do in phase 2, right? So this is also a way to beat the deadlines. So if you have a deadline 6 months from now, and you need to implement everything that the client asks for, you will make the client and the users happy. If you just do the phase 1, you will release it maybe after a few days, maybe after a week, or maybe after several weeks, but you will definitely meet the deadline because not everything from what the client asked for will be implemented, but the most important stuff that will make the users happy and that will make the projects useful will already be deployed, and now you can work on the nice to have stuff and you can react to feedback really quickly. So this is why I do 212. This is why I did 212 releases last year. And because when I'm finished with a bug fix or a new feature or even with just a refactoring, I don't want to keep it to myself. I want to give it to everyone. So that's why I release as often as possible. I don't need to hoard multiple changes and release them all at once. So this might be controversial, but I don't like to do beta 1, beta 2, RC, and only after some period of testing these releases, I will release a 0.0 release, because these betas, these release candidates are not actually tested by anyone. You will only get real feedback if you release 0.0 right away when you're happy with the software. And because you will release 0.0, you will get a lot of feedback, and then you can improve the project faster, and the faults will be found faster. Of course, it's going to be a little bit painful in the beginning. The feedback might be overwhelming, but that's a good thing. You need to sort through the feedback, and you need to release the fixes, and you need to make it usable as fast as possible. Because in the left column, I only start getting feedback after 2.0 is released, and everything that's before that doesn't completely matter. But in the right column, I get feedback right away after the first release, and then I can work on it and improve it, right? And another thing that I'm doing is something called bleeding edge, and it's basically a preview of the next major version shipping in the current release. So I don't develop new rules and new features in a feature branch because I wouldn't get the feedback loop going, but I release them in a stable version, but they are turned off by default. They are released behind feature toggles. So people who want them can enable them and give me feedback without any extra effort by changing the version constraint in the composer JSON to something that has add def or something like that. It's just really simple. They can install the stable version like they are used to, and they can just enable bleeding edge, and they can give me feedback about how wrong or how right it is. Useful feedback. One kind of useful feedback is just that it doesn't crash. It works. It doesn't. It doesn't have any bugs. So that's really useful. Useful feedback is that when I do a refactoring and I release it, I am happy when I just didn't break anything. So that's really useful. And this is a way for you to enable new rules in the PHPStan configuration, and you can test them before everyone else gets them in PHPStan 2.0. So if you use bleeding edge and you update frequently, at the point when I release PHPStan 2.0, you will already be ready for it. It will be easier for you because you already did all the work that's needed for the next major release. All right, managing contributions. So for the same reason, I like quick feedback loops. I also prefer smaller pull requests over a single big one, because with a big pull request, I really don't know what to do with it because there are too many changes. It's hard to review, and it's hard to understand the impact. It's hard to understand what is going to break. And small pull requests are easier to do, which should make you happier as a contributor, and they are easier to review, and they are also safer. So when someone opens a big pull request, when they wrote 1,000 lines of code without first asking me, I just tell them, I look at the code and I tell them, this really should be 3 or 4 smaller pull requests, and this is an idea how they should look. So this is how I manage it. So this is a famous paradox. When you submit 10 lines of code, you find 10 issues. But when you submit 500 lines of code, it looks fine. But I actually want to find those 10 issues in those 10 lines of code because I need that quality control. So I really prefer smaller pull requests. So this is how the typical dev cycle can look like. Some contributor sends a small pull request. I review it. I merge it. And then I have time to think about a problem, and maybe I can steer the direction of the future pull requests. And it also allows others to send changes directly on the stable branch, instead of doing the mess of basing pull requests on top of pull requests, which is really unmanageable. And after every small pull request, we can decide if it's worth releasing and getting that feedback on the work in progress. And for example, generics, a popular feature that was implemented back in 2019, was done over 70 pull requests. So we had with the contributor that made generics, with Arnaud Blanc, we had some talk before how we want it done, and then we decided what was the first logical step. He did it, and then we worked together on this feature for many small pull requests, and it was really awesome. I still think about it to this day, even if it's 4 years ago. How you should divide the task into small pull requests. So you should first make the change easy, and then you should make the easy change. What it means? It means that first you should refactor to unlock some kind of new ability. So for example, adding a new method to an interface, or adding some parameter to some method in some interface. That will unlock an ability, but you can review it and merge it. There's just this refactoring, and maybe release that, and then you can make the easy change. Because if you refactored first and review that, then you can take advantage of the new ability and implement it nicely, instead of combining refactoring and the new feature into one change set. All right, so I think that PHPStan offers great contributor experience. The the internals have clean code. There are many CI checks, and you get immediate feedback. So if you're interested in contributing, there's good news. There's a lot of knowledge in the documentation, and there's a lot of overlap between writing custom PHPStan extensions and contributing to the core. So if you check out the core concepts on the website, and you try to write some custom extensions, like custom rules or other types of extensions. Uh, Once you are familiar with that, you can also contribute to the core because it's very, very similar, and you already have the idea how it works. And you can also check you can also check release notes, you can also check lib commits, because it's a great learning resource. And you can start by looking at easy fixes. There are almost 300 easy fixes that you can choose from. And don't be afraid to ask about anything if you choose issue to fix. All right, we've got 5 minutes left, and I have one more section, so I hope that I can fly through it. And it's about making money. So I opened Patreon account back at the beginning of 2017, which was only a few months after the initial release. And when PHPStan paid for the first bag of groceries, I realized that there might be something interesting. And currently, I am working on PHPStan full time, and I make a decent developer salary. And I was able to achieve that by accepting sponsorships, first on Patreon, and then on GitHub sponsors. And I also did paid PHPStan Pro version. So this is what I'm currently make in a month. I did a Twitter poll, I think that a month ago, and I asked how much money other people make. So about 2/3 voted that they are making less than me, and 1/3 of developers voted that they are making more than me. So I feel like this is a decent developer salary, and it's a proof that that open source can be a sustainable career, sustainable job. And this is the revenue split. So 39% is coming from GitHub sponsors, and I think that the healthiest approach to sponsorships is to only take money for what you're already doing, not for feature requests. So because the most expensive and time-consuming thing is the maintenance of current features. So I think that contributors should be paid for that. Don't implement something only because you are offered the money to implement it. It has to make sense for the project, and it already has to be on the roadmap. And the person who's offering the money should just pay for the privilege to have this thing that you already have on your roadmap to be bumped in the front of the queue. The bad news is that just developing open source software is not enough to make a living. You need to do something extra. So you are spending all this time writing code, and I'm telling you that you need to do something extra. Because unfortunately, by releasing software as open source, you are putting the free price tag on it, and it's hard to change. Because only a special kind of person will sponsor something that others can get for free. So you need to offer something in return. It might be sad, it might be unfair, but those are the cards that we are dealt with. So we need to make the best of the situation. And I'm thinking of it this way. Tennis players do not just play tennis. They also have sponsors, they also have commitments. They have to show up somewhere. They need to take pictures with products in order to make money. So I think that we are in a similar position. And PHPStan Pro is a nicer way to browse errors in your web browser, and it's a paid product with a subscription. And hopefully it's going to do more in the future. And open source, I consider open source as a way to build an audience and then find a way to monetize it. So to offer some kind of paid service or product that does something extra on top of your open source software. And also another comparison similar to tennis players is webcomic authors like XKCD and the Oatmeal, like who everyone knows them, right? They publish free comics on their website, but you can also buy books they've written or board games they've made, like Exploding Kittens, which are also very popular. So at any time in human history, there were always both starving artists and profitable artists. It's just how the world works. And I need to be honest, I didn't get this perfect either, because initially it wasn't my plan to make any money from the project. I just made something that I had the need for and made it available. But I don't regret it at all, because if PHPStan wasn't open source, it wouldn't be as good as popular as it is today. And I really love what I do, and I'm making good salary, so I really don't have anything to complain about. I'm really happy with how it turned out. But if I was starting something new today, I would try to think about and include something premium to pay for from the beginning. All right, last slide. Here are some other examples of successful open source developers. So from left to right, the first one is Fabien Potencier. He's the author of the Symfony framework, but he's also responsible for products like Platform SH, Blackfire, and the Sensio Labs company. The second one is Taylor Otwell. He made the Laravel framework, but he also offers many paid products with the Laravel brand. He made a lot of money with Laravel Forge, which lets you deploy Laravel and other PHP applications to servers very easily. The next one is Adam Waiton. He's the author of the Tailwind CSS framework, and he also offers paid Tailwind UI, which are styled components with Tailwind CSS which you can use to put a complete website together. And the last one is Kev Porzio, who's doing Livewire and Alpine, and he's making money from sponsorware, which means that when he's working on something, he first let his sponsors to access the new product, and also from screencasts. Okay, that's all from me today. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ondřej. It was amazing. I've learned a lot. And unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, but I'm sure if people have questions, please find him for next
Find
2
me
days.
or ask on GitHub.
Thank you.
Thank you.